Passover is coming.
Yeah.
I just never know if anybody does not have a Seder. If anybody does not have a Seder, please send me an email. Okay? I will attempt. I can't promise, but I will attempt. I can promise to try to arrange a Seder for everyone should have a Seder. Okay? And if you don't have, please send me a note privately. Don't post it. Don't do anything. Send me an email, and I will attempt, Risa and I will attempt to make the shidduchim, the arrangements. First Seder.
Sorry, Rabbi Davids, you got muted. Can you unmute yourself? Sorry about that.
Oh,
you're muted, so you just need to. There you
okay.
go.
I am unmuted again. Did everyone hear the invitation?
No, because you cut off.
Invitation, if you do not have a Seder, who's sitting there? Risa, who's there?
Where?
Is that Maya? I can't hear you.
You're muted, Risa.
The whole Davids family is muted.
Maya's here. She just walked in. She's
Oh, cool.
Oh. You're supposed to be in school. Okay. The invitation is, if you do not have a Seder, please send me an email and I will attempt to find a Seder for you. I can't promise that result. I can promise you that I will try. Okay? Do not put it in the chat. I don't need you to do that. But send me an email and I will attempt to find you a Seder. Everybody should have a Seder. Okay?
Rabbi, I want to tell the ladies that they probably know that there's going to be a women's Seder at the temple. Do they know about that?
Yeah, I'm gonna get to Cindy and we'll do that. We will do that.
Yeah.
I am just
Rabbi, people could probably help. I mean, unfortunately, I will be with a huge crowd in San Diego, but it seems if anyone else in this group is having a Seder that could accommodate some of those people, they should also let you know.
If you know of anybody in Phoenix who needs a Seder, we have plenty of room.
okay. So that's great, and let's do it. So if you have space at a Seder, or if you need a space at a Seder, please let me know. Okay? Everyone should have a Seder. Next. That's great, and thank you for that. Next, I want to make a public apology for a mistake that I made. Now, I never make mistakes. I'm a rabbi. I'm ordained. I am perfect. But I made a mistake, and it had to do with the question that Doris raised.
Whoops.
And the question was on the election, and this happened at the current events class. And I made a comment that district attorneys are outside of the electoral process and you can't give money. I was wrong. Okay? So I just want to apologize. And I'm sure you're going to remember this so that you can say, aha, we have a flawed rabbi. Fine. But in fact, in many, not all, many district attorney races, money is raised. And Doris, I apologize to you in the presence of 34 people. Wow.
Don't give it another thought, Rabbi. I never gave it another thought. And so, but I appreciate your apology. You don't have to do that. It's
Yes,
perfect-
I do.
Nice of
Yes.
you to do that.
I have to do it, Doris, because I want people to mostly trust what I say. And that's all.
Okay, okay.
That's
We do.
all.
We do 90% of the time.
90%, huh?
That's pretty good.
Okay.
99 maybe.
I'll take it. I'll take what I got. Okay. It is so good to see everybody here. It is so good. First Seder, April 5th. April 13th is Yiskor, the memorial service at Irmus. I don't see Jim, but I see Cindy. Cindy, what's up?
Well, as Doris mentioned, we have the Women's Seder. It is, although they put Sisterhood's name on it to encourage Sisterhood women to come, it is definitely a WOW Seder. Sorry. WOW and Sisterhood did Seders, Women's Seders very differently. So it is their Seder. The price may feel high, but it's actually half of what the cost actually is, and it's always been a warm and lovely evening. We have dinner at Froman's on the 31st, so enjoy your sandwiches and bread before Passover. If you want to come and have a seat, you need to let Susie know. And then we have some things coming up in April. We're going to be celebrating Israel's birthday, and we're having an end of the year high tea, but I'll tell you those details when we're closer. But we'd love to have you all come to Froman's. In the chat, just leave Susie a little note if you're coming. Otherwise, there won't be a seat for you.
Fantastic. Boy, what a community. That sounds good. That sounds very nice. Sukasa,
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Sue.
The cold.
you sound like me.
I know, yeah. Okay, I wanted to tell you about a couple things WOW is doing. Tomorrow, Diane Worthington, who's written over 30 cookbooks, is going to do a workshop at Glazer for, what do you call it? A Passover. On
Yes.
April 25th, Toby Horn is hosting a dine around, which is a potluck dinner. The flyers will be coming out. Look for them. Everybody should get one. And by the way, on the event tomorrow, if you didn't get one, put something in the chat and I will send you the flyer. And let me think, there was something else. Oh, yes, Diane Worthington, and I don't remember exactly the day, is going to be doing a fun tour of a Korean grocery store, Koreatown, and lunch out at a Korean restaurant. Rebecca, I see you shaking your head. Do you happen to remember the day? No. Okay.
It's
So-
Friday, April 14th, but the Koreatown tour is already sold out.
Oh. Okay.
Forget that.
Well, but anyway, the dine around is not. So
Correct.
okay. Thank you, Hannah.
You're welcome.
That's during the URJ conventions. We used to have conventions, 5,000 people in the same room. It was kind of neat. And every once in a while, when the plenary was underway, when everyone, 5,000 people in the same room, there would be an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States has just arrived, whatever. And it would be deep voice. Please take your seats. We are about to self-destruct, or whatever it is that people needed to hear. That was called VOG. VOG. Voice of God. And a fellow by the name of Paul Reichenbach, remember? Paul Reichenbach, you'd ask him, what is your job at the URJ? I am the voice of God. And you never know when the voice of God would pop up to give us instructions. And I have to tell you, I don't spend a lot of time reminiscing about yesterday, but I miss those 5,000 Reformed Jews in a single mass, enjoying and listening and growing together. Let's start with Leviticus chapter 1, verse 1 and following. Leviticus 1, verse 1 and following.
Leviticus 1, verse 1 and following.
Okay, I have it on page 660 in the Plout. Risa, do you have the sisterhood?
571.
571. Thank you for that. So we are there. Now, we're starting the book of Vayikra. This is the third book in the Torah. It is wonderful. It is, as a congregational rabbi, it is the time when parents say to me, I don't want my kid to be bar mitzvah then, because why should they read about leprosy or sacrifices or things like that? I want another day. And I would say, but the board has mandated that you have to have the bar mitzvah date closest to your birthday. And it's not my fault when that egg got fertilized. So I have to tell you that inevitably won me many friends, many friends. We only had, to my knowledge in my life, one family that resigned the temple so they could join another temple and get a non-Leviticus bat mitzvah. Her particular date was Mitzorah, was on dealing with skin diseases. And I kind of didn't disagree with the parents who might have wanted something, mommy, what was your bat mitzvah about? Skin disease. Okay, so there it is. Now, here we start. Please, if you have a Hebrew text in front of you, you see the very first word of the Sedra. It looks strange. Can please somebody tell me why it looks strange?
And there's a little aleph with an asterisk on top of it at the end.
It's a little aleph. And the little aleph is always there. And I can give you a whole bunch of midrashim as to why that aleph is small. I suspect that the real reason is, at a certain point in time, a scribe copying out the Sefer Torah made the aleph a little smaller. It then became a tradition. And then, hi, baby. Hi, I know that. Hi, how are you? And so you can have all kinds of reasons. I'm not going to offer them. There are many reasons that the rabbis offer, but let's look at the text. Vayikra Moshe ve'yedaber Adonai elav be'oel moed lemor. The Eternal One called to Moses and spoke to Moses from the tent of meeting. Speak to the children of Israel and tell them. In Hebrew, calling to Moses is softer than commanded Moses, demanded of Moses. Calling, Rashi will say, is a term of affection. Terms of affection. So when God calls to Moses, it's like, hey, Moshe, listen up. It's a term of affection. And then Rashi, far be it for Rashi to let that one go. Rashi then says, of course, when God calls to non-Jews, it often is expressed with another root. It sounds the same, mikra. God happened upon the Gentile and told them. So Rashi wanted to be clear. Moses was called with affection. The Israelites are called with commandments. And the rest of the world, yeah, God cares, but at a different level. There is only now one place where I know that that point of view is explicitly rejected. The prophet Amos, who says, Halo chivnei kushim li b'nei Israel. Israelites, you are the same to me as the Ethiopians, like every other nation. I am God. All the people on earth are equally my children. And so I tell Rashi, forget it. I don't accept what you have to say. I am an Amos guy. I believe, by the way, I believe deeply. Amos's statement, Halo chivnei kushim li, you are like the Ethiopians or every other place to me. I am God of all humanity. And stop pretending that the relationship between God and the Jewish people makes the Jewish people other than all humanity. Okay, I see a hand up. Arthur.
I would like to know the address when God said every people on the earth are my children.
You want to know the address?
Yes.
You want to know the quote in the chapter?
Yes.
I find that very impertinent. You have to take my word for it. It's there. I said
No. I want to use it for other people. I knew this.
Tamara, do you have the exact quote? If not, I will pull down a Tanakh. I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I'll put it in the chat. I have to look up the exact thing.
Yeah, Amos only has 9 chapters. It's not hard to find, but I will find. Tamara will find it and put it in the chat. Okay.
Thank you.
It is not just a chat. It's a real thing. Now, Moses is called. Oh, Steve Miller. Yes, thank you.
If you don't take the Amos point of view, how can you truly be a monotheist? The belief there's one God. Everybody may not recognize it, or everyone may approach that single God differently, but if you're a true monotheist, that has to be your belief.
Okay, let me just go this way. Steve, I'm going to agree with you. But for example, how do I say this knowing that it's being recorded? One of my favorite Jewish racists is Yehuda Halevi. Okay, I can be challenged on that, but Yehuda Halevi believed that yes, everyone is the same, but genetically, he didn't have the language. But that's what he meant. There is an Inyan Elohi. There is un certain je ne sais quoi, a certain thing that's divine, that is transmitted from Jew to Jew, parent to child. He believed that. So Steve, and Yehuda Halevi was a great poet, a great philosopher. He did a lot of good things, and you know, okay.
But that doesn't mean he didn't believe that God was also the one God for all other people, just that he discriminated.
Okay, fine.
Well, that is a difference, I think.
Okay, but okay, Merle.
I was always taught at this particular temple that I guess the Job philosophy, the Amos philosophy, and I don't remember ever learning about Amos specifically, but that's what I was always taught in Sunday school as far as I went, which was Hebrew high school or whatever it was called then, post-confirmation, that was the philosophy, that everyone was the same and we treated everyone the same. I never knew until I started learning about people's issues as an adult, I never realized that we weren't all the same. If you know what I'm saying. Nobody ever talked about, I don't remember anybody ever talking about Amos per se.
Okay, by the way, you know what? It's worth talking about Amos. It is.
Yeah.
It's worth. Arthur asked for the chapter and verse, and Tamara posted it 9:7. The Cushites, Halochiv ne Kushim, understood to be Ethiopians, Cushites. But I think it's a mistake to teach generic Judaism without locating it in its origin and source. That's all. I think that teaching Amos is really important because its ideas are not universally shared by all Jews. And Merle, as much as I'm grateful to Wilshire Boulevard for teaching you the truth, it just is unfortunately true that people, Jews, can read Amos, read this passage, God calls. Rashi says, God calls to the non-Jew differently. That's one of the reasons why I'm proud to be a Reformed Jew. But it is how we read the text. Howard, and then Susie.
I don't know if anyone else has had the pleasure of belonging to a Reconstructionist synagogue, such as we have here at Pacific Palisades, but they make a huge, that's nice, a huge distinction, at least the one we here did. It's almost like it's the main issue, that the Jews are not the chosen people. They changed the prayer on reading the Torah instead of who has singled us out from all the nations. You have to say who has called us close to him in the actual prayer on the Torah. So it's a big deal. They think that for the Jews to say they're the chosen people, as apparently all other Jews do, is very presumptuous and engenders hatred of Jews, I think.
Which is interesting. You're totally correct. Risa and I belong to a Reconstructionist synagogue in Woodstock, New York.
Oh, nice.
I was rabbi in New York, but we would come up on the weekends after services, and there was a Reconstructionist. So we are among those who belong.
I don't know that Mordecai Kaplan made such a big deal out of it, but he certainly did make that distinction.
And Mordecai Kaplan's daughter,
Judith,
was a member of that congregation. And we would have the privilege of going to Judith's and Ira Eisenstein's home in Woodstock. And little Stanley Davids was interrogated by Ira and Judy as to what the gossip in Manhattan was that week. And it was being connected almost to the source, Howard, was pretty exciting for me. It was. By the way, the Reconstructionist movement has now moved away from officially removing who has chosen us from the Torah blessing. Yeah, I can't account for that. Okay, Susie. No,
She's muted.
Susie, you're
Unmute, unmute.
Okay,
very muted.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. Now am I muted?
No, you're okay.
I grew up in a conservative synagogue with a conservative family. And I was always really taught, I'm embarrassed to say this, that the Jews were the chosen people. And I'm so glad that Howard brought it up. I don't ever say it, but I certainly at least 3 or 4 times a year in social settings, Jews say to each other, we're the chosen people. It's not a good thing to say, especially when there are other people around. It's pompous. So thank you, Howard.
Well,
Okay, do you
every-
ever recite the Torah blessings?
every Saturday 7 times we say we're the chosen people.
Asher Bachar Bana Mikol Ha'amim, who has chosen us from among all peoples. That is every Shabbos. And my little cousin friend, who is going to be bar mitzvah next week, is going to say Asher Bachar Banu. And unfortunately, he understands Hebrew. But that's a problem. Usually we can get away with that. Arthur?
I believe the chosen people is for the moment or for the situation when God decided to go through genetic engineering to create Jewish whatever it is. That is the reason that they sent to Lavan to take a girl from his uncle to remain the genetic in that category of people. That is what I think of chosen people mean.
I am going to do something which is unusual. I think the topic is worth a week to explore. But I want to get back to the Sedra itself. The chosen people issue is complicated. And it's more complicated by people who don't really understand what the text means and use language which is heavily nuanced. So again, Susie, did we lose Susie? Because Sukasa, we lost her because of connections. We should have a time to spend talking together. We'll do that. I want to go back to Leviticus. God calls to Moses. The people don't hear it. Aaron doesn't hear it. This is a communication to Moses, and God speaks to Moses from out of the tent of meeting. Folks, that's a problem. Why is that a problem? May Ohel Moed, from out of the tabernacle. It reads so smoothly. It's a problem. Okay? Can you tell what the problem is? We talked about, Merle, I see you. We talked about the ark, remember? And the ark had the cherubim faced each other. And then we said in the space between the cherubim, God in some way manifested the divine presence and spoke to Moses there. Here it says Vayikra Moshe ve'Adonai elav me ohel moed, from out of the tent of meeting, which implies
Nobody could hear it. The other people couldn't hear it.
the other people couldn't hear. God is speaking. Where's Moses?
Outside the tent?
Ah, who said that?
I did.
Okay, yes. This isn't the system they're supposed to be.
They're not part of the community, is what I was gonna
Oh,
say.
no. I'm just worried about Moses and God. Moses is supposed to be in the tent of meeting. God is speaking out of. I'm getting a big head shake no from my teacher. Please, Tamara, please.
Well, the last time we met Moses, he could not come to the tent in Exodus 40 at the very end because God was filling the tent. So Moses couldn't come to Moses is not in the tent in this scene. And now God inaugurating the tent by, in a way, showing that God moved into the tent, if you will. And now this is where you're going to want to look for God, in the tent, or oriented towards the tent, not the top of the mountain, but the tent. And it's kind of getting them ready for the journey in which God will become mobile. So it makes perfectly good sense that Moses is outside the tent and God is speaking to him from within the tent. At least,
But that will change. That will change tomorrow, right?
yeah, it will change. But right now, I think what the writer is doing is making a very nice transition from where we were last week to now getting us ready to find God in the Mishkan, in the Ohel Moed that they have constructed.
Totally agree. Okay? But the language may ohel moed from the tent to Moses needs to be pointed out. Moses, if you can picture it, is standing outside the tent.
Right.
Moses is standing outside the tent. God is speaking from within the tent, but speaking in such a way that only Moses can hear him, even though he's outside the tent where the other people are.
Going in the kitchen.
Aaron can't hear him. Miriam can't hear him. The people can't hear him. Moses gets it. Okay? I see Eric's hand.
Was Moses on a special frequency with God that other Israelites didn't have? He had the link posted to him only, and the frequency only posted to him. So he was the only one able to hear God at that present time. Okay?
You know, what I did, because I think I was in a bad mood when I was writing this, I put down, this is like Bluetooth. That's what I did here. It's like Bluetooth. God is speaking. Moses picks it up. I have the same problem. As you know, I am moderately to annoyingly deaf, and I have hearing aids, and I have I'm Jewish. I have my Apple phone, and it's Bluetooth. And when the phone rings, it rings in my ears. So I'm in the middle of a conversation and I turn to start searching for the phone, and people are looking at me like, why? What? It's obvious. The phone is ringing. We don't hear the phone ringing. Okay. Yes. Eric. Yes. It's like he's on a different frequency. And I absolutely.
I have hearing aids too that go into my phone, and they think it's strange. I'm having conversations with Harvey the Invisible Rabbit. Only I can see him. Thank you.
So the rabbis want to put in a little bit of a delay factor. Why is God speaking to Moses alone, but saying to Moses, Daber el bnei Israel, speak to the children of Israel? That's putting on an unnecessary universal. What? God, why don't you talk to the people? Two reasons. One, if you remember the story at Sinai, the voice of God was too much for the people to handle. And there are even some thoughts that some people died at Sinai when God initially spoke. And the second part is God wanted to speak privately, Bluetooth, with Moses to give, and the commentators say this, to give Moses a chance to think and to assimilate what is being transmitted from God. And only when Moses has processed it will he then tell the people, Mara or Harv or whoever.
I was always taught that one of the defining factors for Judaism, as opposed to certainly Christianity, was that we did not require an intermediary to communicate with God. And some of this suggests that in fact is not the case. Was there a time of transition in thinking about this?
Try me again. Help me once more. What are you asking?
I've always been taught that Jews don't, the difference, one of the differences between Judaism and Christianity was that whereas, I shouldn't say Catholicism, is that as a Catholic, you have the Pope, you have a priest who is between you and God. You don't communicate directly with God, but Jews don't have that. We have rabbis that teach us, but we don't need a rabbi to communicate with God. And so
yes, you do.
So this suggests that wasn't always the case. And I was wondering if there was a time of transition or if I was simply taught incorrectly.
Yes and yes. That's probably not helpful. One of the things Risa well knows as I'm boring with this recitation. If I had to do my world over again while I'm a congregational rabbi, I would get a PhD in comparative religion. That's something I say a lot. It's too late. The last time I had a CAT scan of my head because of an injury, the doctor said, your brain is shrinking from age. So my brain is shrinking. I'm not going to get a PhD now. But we make so many ordinary statements, Mara, about what is different between Judaism and other religions. Not all of those statements are accurate or sufficiently nuanced. One of the questions in religious thought, the problem of having an infinite God communicate with finite people is an overwhelming challenge. And every religious tradition has to find a way to work through that challenge. In Judaism, you know about the Shekhinah. Once you start talking Shekhinah, you already have an intermediary. And believe me, I have not said the complete thing there. There are differences. Yes, 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 and yes. But we all, if we choose to believe that there is an infinite God controlling, creating, embodying the cosmos, then we have to find a way for that God to be in touch with us. And that's been a multi-thousand-year task. So I'm not able to say that Jews totally avoid the problem of an intermediary. When we speak of the Shekhinah as the feminine aspect of God, what does that mean? And it's subject to a lot of conversation. Okay? It is one of the reasons why I have abandoned traditional theism. Instead of constructing workarounds, I have come to reject certain aspects of the original question. Mara, as always, a chance to push back. Okay. Okay. Jeff, Larry, and Brad. Oh boy, the Holy Trinity.
Some of that
Okay.
answer.
Yeah, I'd like to return to Mara's question and think there's a potential confusion here between the creation of a civilization or the founding of a nation and a practice of worship as we've known it in the last few hundred years. The story of the Torah, in my opinion, is extremely paternalistic and has to do with picking a leader who's going to found a nation, just like in a lot of myths about creators of civilizations or of peoples. And so I think that clearly Moses has been singled out here to be the one to interpret and to lead. And like in all good stories, there's conflict because he's a very unwilling participant at first. He complains, he rebels, he doesn't have all the tools, but he ends up prevailing, although he's prevented from entering the Holy Land. It's a great story, and the story continues. And I think overall, the view of how Judaism grew as a civilization, to use Mordecai Kaplan's word, is very much about leaders molding and shaping and having to take almost, the Jews are referred to, I'd say, as children quite a bit. They act like children. As soon as they get into the desert, they complain. They want to go back to Egypt, and there has to be a parent, and Moses is that parent who's answering to his parent. And I think in the early worship, even Mara, that it was very much on what you would consider what you're calling the Catholic model, that God could only be reached through this layer of somewhat self-appointed interpreters. And it was only when when Jews were forced out of Israel and we became people of the book, that the practices that eventually became Reformed Judaism evolved to the point that we didn't need intermediaries. In fact, the whole structure that had been built up prior to the destruction of the temple had been quite corrupt in some cases. And certainly, even if you agreed with it, was quite hierarchical. Anyway, so like I said, my major point is that I think there's a difference between the story that's told here and how we worship. Two very different things.
That's great. I'm going to just drop in something. At the time of my son's ordination as a rabbi, I was invited to address his ordination class. He was ordained at Temple Emmanuel in New York. That was the only time I was ever invited to preach at Temple Emmanuel. Ten stories tall on the inside, the building. The rabbi walks up off the bima onto a midway platform, which is covered over with a sound projecting canopy, permanent material, wood, I have no idea. If I would tell you that standing in front of a congregation in a 10-story tall sanctuary, and then when you go up to preach, you go up higher under this canopied platform. And then you're telling me, Jeff, that with Reform Judaism, we have abandoned the power of an individual. And I have to tell you, I stood there. And it can be very confusing as to what my power is. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I wasn't attempting to suggest that Reform Judaism is any one thing, or that there isn't still quite a strain of that kind of originally paternalistic but hierarchical power. I could also argue that the idea of elevating the experience, the idea of creating a holy space and a holy time has to be, in some ways, the architecture could be seen as glorifying the experience rather than the individual. But I would say we of a certain generation being brought up in certain paternalistic practices would conflate that elevation of experience to elevation of ego and prominence. So I'm not disagreeing.
And I have to finish up, Jeff, by saying I really got off on the experience. Please hear the total lack of, oh my God, how do you do that week after week? Okay, fine. Now we have Brad and then Larry, and then there are others.
Well, I think the first organized religion to do away with this concept of an intermediary between the worshiper and God was the Protestantism. That was the whole basis for Protestantism, returning to the Bible and the printing of the Bible, the Gutenberg Bible, for example. So we as Reformed Jews are, in a sense, descendants of the Protestant Reformation and the change that brought in terms of our relationship with God, that we can have a more direct relationship with God without the need of an intermediary.
Okay, we would have fun, and it's just time is fleeting. I would argue with you that we are, if you will, severely, strongly influenced by the Protestant Reformation as to how we got to where we are. I think that's a really important question, and I'm not able to say, sure, you're right, because the same forces that created the Protestant Reformation were operating on Judaism, but that doesn't mean that the Protestant Reformation is the source of what became Reformed Judaism. But that's a great question. Larry, I have a couple things I really want to cover here. Okay, Larry.
So I'll be quick, but I think, like Jeff, my thought is triggered by the fact that early on in Exodus, we learned that Moses is not at all perfect, is not a good speaker, is perhaps unwilling to take on the role he's been assigned. And what we get in Leviticus now is Moses's perhaps imperfect, but clearly human recitation of what God is saying to Moses. And so I think where it leads us is as an institution, as a religion, we have more human and an imperfect recitation of God's word, and it allows for a little bit of wiggle room, a lot of interpretation, an ability to deal with situations that may not have come up in the text, but it's because it's human.
I love it. Larry, thank you for that. And I'm going to just go back to Rashi's comment. God spoke. Moses then needed time to think and to process, and then Moses talked to the people, which is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what you're saying. And thank you for that. Okay, I see Stacy, and then I'm going to run because I really have some interesting things to do here. Stacy.
Okay, thank you. Two, I think, quick questions. If not, then maybe table it for another time. But do we as Reformed Jews believe that God is male? I mean,
no, nobody believes that.
Wait, whoa, who said that?
Effie.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Effie has joined the feminists. Okay.
Okay. So are we saying that we do assign a gender to God?
That's part of the question, Stacy, that I always bump up against when I hear the Shekhinah referred to as the feminine aspect of God. And that's a standard equation. Feminine aspect of God. If that is the feminine aspect, is there then the rest of it is the masculine aspect? The problem of getting from infinite to finite is forever a problem. And it challenges us as to how we encounter God. To be simple, which is not my style, I cannot in any way imagine God as male, as masculine. No. But then what is the feminine aspect of a non-gendered God? I need to learn a lot. I really do. I've never had the chance to hear a well-educated feminist explain that to me. I understand why it's necessary. I understand why it's religiously uplifting and enriching. But if I'm going to consider it philosophically, I need to be educated.
Okay.
Not saying it's not. I need to be educated. One, Tamara, do you want to jump in and help me? No. Okay. Steve, last comment, and then I want to throw something out, and then we're going to end up. I don't know. The hour's not enough, Steve.
Right.
Steve, you're muted, which is lovely.
On the masculine feminine issue, every person even has degrees of masculine and feminine traits. It doesn't define your gender that you have that. And God has no gender, but we are made in God's image. So there must be pieces of God with various traits, values, beliefs. It doesn't mean God has any gender, but that there are aspects of this being, just as a person, that really run the gamut, because we all have elements of everything within us. It's a matter of
totally.
how we express them.
I am totally with you. The binary view of gender is passé. It's just, it doesn't work. And yes, I agree with you. I just want to mention there are things that occur in the commentaries which are so important. Ibn Ezra when he begins this consideration of the boring recitation of the sacrifices, says clearly, I quote, "There are secrets connected with every form of sacrifice." Ibn Ezra says, you are making a mistake if you read these chapters and all you read are the rules and the regulations of sacrifice. Because beneath the rules and regulations, there are secrets, his word, secrets that God is trying to convey. Ibn Ezra is inviting us to use our thoughts, our feeling, our theologies, our needs, our yearnings, to try to find within this the lessons that Judaism has always managed to find within the sacrificial system. It just isn't a surface thing. Metaphors and secret meanings abide. So, for example, Rashi says, there are fools out there. Rashi's words, fools, who believe that if you bring a sacrifice, all is well. If your attitude, Rashi says, if your attitude does not involve a humble approach to God, then the fulfilling of the exact rules of sacrifice lead you nowhere. You are a fool, Rashi. Rashi goes on. God is not interested in offerings of Jews who have rejected their Judaism or who have neglected Shabbat and the practices of Jewish life. There's so much to think about there. If what we are doing, the rituals, are not an adequate reflection of who we really are, then the acts of religion mean nothing.
Hello. I saw something in Isaiah chapter 43, which really hits you in the kishkes. You know what I mean, Rabbi?
What do you be specific and quick, Eric? We have to end.
Because we have to be honest in our sacrifices, I believe. You know, like we have to have pure intentions. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you. And the Hebrew word for that is kavanah.
That's what I meant. That's what we studied in East End Temple yesterday. But Isaiah, you have to have good intentions, not going through the motions. Thank you very much.
Rabbi, I'd like to return. Rabbi, can I just return to you at Temple Emmanuel for 1 second? Because I think in our tradition, we revere education, we revere knowledge, we revere leaders who can bring us closer to knowledge. So there's a reason why you're on a bima, whether it's 10 stories high or just standing on a chair. And that's because you have knowledge to impart and wisdom to impart and stimulate thinking. But knowledge is power. So the two are connected. When you talk about interpreting secrets, and only I, the rabbi or whoever, can interpret those secrets, and that gives me a certain power. So the tension between knowledge and power, authority and leadership is always present. And but I want to emphasize the positive. You're in front of us because you have things to teach us and we want to learn.
Of course. I mean, yes. I mean, thank you. Or whatever is properly humble. Folks, for some of you who don't know, and I'm going to close with this and go to Kaddish. For those of you who don't know, when Risa and I first came to University Synagogue and were invited to rejuvenate the Chevra Torah experience, Jeff was the guy who made it happen. Okay? So you have special standing here. I'm going to punch your parking ticket or something. And thank you for that. We're going to go now to Kaddish. And I want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. Wonderful. If you leave us, if you choose to stay to help make the minyan, that would be great. Those who have passed away during the past month: Silva Bialik, Sam Davis, Lucas Foster, Judith Susan Gelb, Celia Goldman, Sharon Levy Jaffe, Ruth Kalin, Joseph Joey Klein, Phyllis Kogan, John Levi Jr., Arnold Palmer, Ronald Schiff, Fran Shanbrom, Clara Stovitz, Richard Sutkin, Susanna Tizabi, Joan Vogel. And those, the anniversaries of whose deaths have occurred during this past week: Goldie Atler, Richard Barish, Esther Bender, Ida Burnfield, J. Steve Brody, Julia Steve Brody, Lillian Brostoff, William Brunman, Peter Cohn, Helen Waxler Coleman, Marvin Connie, Sidney Davidson, Menachem Davidson, Shmuel Dick, Ellen Emmett, Harry Faggett, Munish Feinberg, Max Fields, Raymond Fine, Alan Friedman, John Gertis, Lillian Ginsburg, Philip Ginsburg, George Goldstein, Donald Greenberg, Edith Hecht, Tibor Hyman, Ambrose Holtzman, Beverly Jacobs, Leon Janel, Sandy Jarko, Sophie Jasny, Stephen Carr, William J. Kend, Barry Kesser, Samuel Klein, Al Kleiner, Wendy Landis, Myron Levy, Cecile Levy, Saul Lieber, Ida Lieberman, Gilbert Lindheim, Dennis Lindquist, Minette London, Leo Marantz, Neil Markman, Dr. Louis Mayers, Joseph Moses Miller, Rosanna Michelle, Sylvia Morrison, Jerome Uchin, Lita Naeem, Edith Newman, Bertha Nugent, Harry Perelman, Myrtle Lorch, Failzer, Edgar Phillips, Albert Platt, Arno Prinz, Calvin Rabineau, Sanford Rieger, Eva Roman, Florence Rose, Esther Rosen, Joseph David Rosen, Helen Cohn Rosenblum, Susan Joan Rosenfeld, Ethel Rothman, Reva Sandler, Harry Schneider, Esther Schwade, Harry Shane, Julian Sirati, Jack Silverclight, Miriam Smook, Avriel Soller, Greta Solomon, Ida Sosnow, Rosia B. Speed, Aurelia Martinez Tapia, Rosalie Turner, Norman Turtle, Leah Vollner, Jerry Waldman, Stanley Wallens, Stephen Weiss. If there are other names to be remembered now, I ask that you speak those names aloud or you speak them in your hearts. We mention as well and bear in our hearts the names of all of those who died in defense of the United States, those who died in defense of the state of Israel, those who were killed through acts of senseless violence, those who have no one to remember them. At this point, there was a horrible tornado. More than 23 died. We bear their names and their beings in our hearts as well. We join together in Kaddish as we say Yitgadal v'Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah Yalmad Divra Chirutei v'Yamlich Malchutei b'Chayei Uv'Yomei Chon Uv'Chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv, v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shmei rabba mavarach, le'olam le'olmei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei d'kudishah, richu. Le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim, aleinu v'yal Yisrael, v'imru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'imramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'imru amen.
Amen.
May God, who makes peace in the high places, make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes, make peace in the household of Israel, make peace among all the families and nations of earth. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Love you.
Shabbat shalom.
This
Shabbat
community
shalom. Thank
is
you.
without
Shabbat
parallel.
shalom.
Have a beautiful week, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
Susie, Dean and I are coming next
Shabbat
I
Friday.
shalom.
know, I got your email, Effie. Look forward to seeing you. Anybody else that wants to join us on Friday, the last one, please do. I don't mean the last one, I mean the last Friday of the month. Lots of
Shabbat
love.
shalom.
Bye.
Have a great week. Thank you all.